In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, we would like to welcome you, Rabbi, here in Dearborn, Michigan, and Karbala Islamic Center. Last time you visited us, maybe about 4 years ago. You are more than welcome. It's a blessing to have you, and it's an honor for you to visit us here in Dearborn, and we would love to talk to you about different issues. You really came in very right time, and always there is something good to talk about and to exchange ideas. And I wonder, people these days, they politicalize the children of Abraham. Now we are going to talk really about the real childhood of Abraham and the real relationship between us. So just to welcome you, and you have microphone. So we just welcome you, and you are more than welcome here in Dearborn.
With the help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of sanctifying His name, conveying His message. It is an honor and a privilege. I'm humbled to be with such an esteemed Imam and in such a really the community, and everybody here is so exceptionally nice. As my experience is with the people, the Muslim people around the world, but this is since I've been here, I left an indelible impression.
Our friendship, Rabbi, it's maybe more than 20 years.
Yes.
When was the last time you was here in the invasion of South Lebanon? And we've been demonstrating since then. Then you came in again here. And by the way, inshallah, God willing, this visit is a beginning of another visit. And one day we're going to go to Iraq, me and you. And God willing, and you maybe with the other friends and the rabbis, to visit the birthplace of Abraham, and so many sites we have in Iraq, like between the road between Babylon to Karbala or to Najaf. We have the sites of Abraham, Job, Ayub, the Kifl, Isaiah, I believe, and we have the place where Noah built his own ship. We have Idris. I mean, a lot of the Torah, biblical prophets and messengers are there. So anyway, let's start with the first question, if you don't mind. The world is going on in a very critical situation. It's in the war age, and the issues of Palestine has not been solved yet. And the whole area, it looks like sitting on a top of a volcano. So generally, why do you think this kind of hateness is happening between children of Abraham, between the Jewish and Christian and Muslims, for example, while we have a lot of common ground and a lot of similarity and one purpose and one goal? So why do you think this are happening? And later on we're going to talk about solutions. So what is your idea, Rabbi?
The Almighty, I'm not the prophet, and I don't, unfortunately, I don't have the Spirit of God to tell me, to be able to definitively say what is happening. But we always say that the Almighty in every generation give the people tests to see if they are loyal. And in this situation, in this time, it is the test of this generation. We found that the people who strayed from God, people from the Jewish religion who unfortunately actually rebelled against the words of God and openly rebelled against the words of God. This is already ongoing for over 200 years. The movement of reform Judaism means that reforming, they're going to change. So you can't change the words of God, they can't change the Jewish religion, and the movement started. And from that, their children were already estranged from the religion, and many of the people who decided to form Zionism, which is an ideology of nationalism, that instead of just they should assimilate and sort of melt into society, which was reformed, that they're going to reform, they're going to just pick and choose what's convenient to keep of the religion. They don't keep, they keep pig, they don't keep the Ten Commandments, they don't keep the Sabbath. Their children and their grandchildren, and many of them just simply didn't feel any attachment at all, but they felt they're being harassed because they're Jewish. They said, hey, let's make our own nationalism, and that's going to protect us, forgetting that everything is in the hands of God, and maybe God is just sending them a warning that they should repent and return to obey Him and follow the Torah. But instead of doing that, unfortunately, they decided that they'll make their national home to protect them. And they wanted to do that in Uganda and Patagonia, different areas that would be a fruitful land, a land that would have been, in those days, it was more of production of, a land that you can produce fruits and so forth. That was the way you looked at things. Not today, as everything is technological, it's a whole different world. But anyway, so they decided, but then they had this big meeting in the 1890s. They had a big meeting, these Zionist convention, where they decided that it would be more practical to create a homeland in Palestine, because then they'd be able to call for the support from people around the world, the evangelistic Christians, because in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it says that God gave the Jews the land, and then could call at Jews who don't know their religion. And basically, they decided to make their homeland in Palestine, and doing that is a direct rebellion against God. Jews are forbidden to create their own sovereignty. So it's a direct rebellion against God. It wouldn't matter where on the face of the earth Jews would try to make their own homeland. It's forbidden. But being that they decided to make their homeland in Palestine, this compounded the rebellion against God, because you're taking it in your homeland and nationalism in the land of a people that were living there, which was mostly Muslim community and a Christian community, and ironically even a Jewish community, and they were all opposed to this movement of Zionism. And I always show pictures of this, when the Zionists made their first their first reading of the Declaration of Independence in 1948. You can see the pictures of the ones that were gathered there. Ben-Gurion is he was the first prime minister, the picture of Theodor Herzl there. Star of David, which is a holy sign of Judaism. And they're all sitting there, not one of them is covering their heads. Imagine making a Muslim state without with an imam, or imagine making a Christian state without a priest or something, or pope. And this is how they decided to make, this is the farce, the hypocrisy of their so-called Jewish state. So they're making it a Jewish state which is a direct rebellion against God. It says, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. How dare they make their homeland on the heads and shoulders in the homes of the Palestinian people? On top of that, the Jewish people suffered through these 2,000 years of our exile since the destruction of the temple, and it was the Muslim countries and the Muslim people and Arab people, but mostly Muslim people, who went and they embraced the Jews when we were being harassed in Spain and Portugal, when there was the burning of Jews because they refused to convert to Christianity. There was the Crusades, the Inquisition, and it was the Muslim countries that embraced the Jews, and we flourished in every Muslim and Arab land, even though we have a distinctly different religion, but we believe in one God we serve, and we were embraced, respected, and we put out our greatest rabbis for hundreds of years without any human rights groups to protect us. So that, even though we have a distinctly different religion, it was never an impediment of coexistence. It was never an impediment of the Muslim people stood and protected us. I love to show the pictures how Jews lived together as brothers and sisters, babysat each other's children. This was our history in basically every Arab and Muslim land, including in Palestine. Now, the Torah says to the Jewish people that Mahu rachum af atotei rachum. Just as God is compassionate, you should become compassionate. Emulate God. God tells us that we have to show gratitude for good done. So besides that you're not allowed to steal and kill, we have to show gratitude for these hundreds and hundreds of years of the good, the blessings that was given to us from our Arab and Muslim neighbors. And how dare these Zionists come now and make a declaration to the world that the Palestinian people and the Muslims hate the Jews, and they don't let them form their state because they hate Jewish people. It is so repulsive. It's hard to repeat. And that's what the part of the Nakba is. This terrible crime against God to take people who have been so good to the Jewish people and vilify them. So we as Jews, including all our great rabbis around the world, declared from day one that we oppose this whole concept of creating a so-called Jewish state, and not only a so-called Jewish, but especially because they want to create it in the land of Palestine. And from right away, when they in the United Nations wanted to ratify the state, is the chief rabbi of our community, nothing to do with the Israeli rabbinate, which is a farce, that's just window dressing like they use the Star of David. But our chief rabbi was Rabbi Jashinsky at the time in 1947. It was the United Nations ratified the State of Israel in 1948. So we have the documents of the United Nations, and we put it out in one of the books. It's called Traditional Torah Opposition to Zionism, Historical Documents. And this is one of the documents. And this is declaration before the United Nations, July 16, 1947. And this is Rabbi Dushinsky declaring to the delegation of the United Nations before they ratified to make a state of Israel. And he said, "We furthermore wish to state our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." Again, he says, "We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." And since then, and from day one, our rabbis and hundreds of thousands of Jews have been demonstrating in the streets of Jerusalem. These are literally hundreds of thousands of Jews. These are in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, throughout Palestine. And this is our chief rabbi today, going to a demonstration. His name is Rabbi Weiss. This is a New York demonstration. Around the world, wherever there's a very religious community, we demonstrate the existence of the Zionist state of Israel. At the cost of our lives. This is in Washington, D.C. I mean, you see it's the hundreds of thousands. This is in the streets of Jerusalem. Stop Zionist terrorist massacre in Gaza. You can see, and they're arrested. They refuse to go to the army. The Jews, the Jewish boys and girls, even though there's mandatory service in the IDF, they refuse. They get arrested. There's a girl crying, holding a book of Psalms, praying. Look, children get attacked. All because we stand on the streets and demonstrate against and we don't carry guns. We're not militant, and yet the old men, young children, this is what is being done to them. So this is part of the sad history that the world is ignoring.
Okay, Rabbi, this prejudice or the Zionist attitude, does it have any foundation in the Judaism, or this is something they just made it up? They kind of limiting the ideology of the Judaism, which it came to the whole world.
Yes.
They made it just a little bit. So this prejudice, did they find any foundation? What is based on what?
They did, because in the Torah, it says, "Thou shalt not kill," right? The 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal. But if you just block the words thou shalt not, it says kill, steal. So they have a foundation. They just conveniently, they just pick and choose. They take what they want, they misconstrue, they falsify the words of the Torah, and they make a rabbi, a grand rabbi, who traipses around the world. They have a chief rabbi who signs off whenever they have to make an attack or cut down the olive orchards which we're not allowed to cut fruit trees. Everything they do is because they manipulate and misconstrue the words of the Torah, and they pay for some rabbis, some rotten apples who they use, and so it's really unfortunate. But the true religious leaders have been screaming at the top of their lungs, and we even compiled a book that we put out that's called The Rabbis Speak Out, which is a compilation from 130 years, because Zionism is over 100 years. People think it's only the 73 years that they've occupied, that they have the state of Israel. No. They attacked and started going in the 1880s, they already were starting to come encroaching on the Palestinian land. And all these rabbis from all those periods stood up in this is not all the rabbis, this is just the major rabbis from around the world. For instance, I just opened to Rabbi Yisroel Meir HaKohen. He was one of the codifiers of Jewish law from Lithuania. All the Jewish world respects him and uses him as a teacher of the laws, of Jewish laws. And he wrote just one quote of his. This is like just taking out quotes, short quotes of all the great rabbis from around the world. And he said, "The Zionists are dead limbs of our people, which causes the entire body to riot." Imagine that. It caused the entire body to riot. This is just an example. But the rabbis, this is from Rabbi Yisroel Abu Chatzira. He is from Iraq, I believe. Abu Chatzira, the Mishpat. Yes. And he passed away in 1984 from 1890. And he said, he ruled that it's forbidden to participate. In 1965, he put out an edict that it's forbidden to participate in the government elections because it is against our holy Torah. In other words, it should have nothing to do with the Israeli elections. And just an example, this is a rabbi from Iraq. I mean, we can go from every corner of the world. Wherever there's a serious leader of Judaism, they say stand far from them because they're haram.
Okay, Rabbi, is there any don't they listen to some of good, spiritual, clean, honest rabbis like you to know that they are going in a dead end and they are going to destroy themselves by acting against the real Torah and against the real teaching of the Judaism and the real teaching of Moses and the Torah? Don't they know that?
You know, that question,
are they drunk or
it's the Almighty in His great wisdom created in every generation the power, that there's the power of the Shatan, of the Satan. And it is to test everybody. We always were taught, we have to thank God that we were saved, that we didn't fall into the hands of the Satan. But other people, we find in every generation there was a false Messiah by Judaism, that many Jews follow that. And through the generations, it happens that there's some people that mislead people that they should do something which is terribly tragic and wrong.
Is there anywhere it says, Rabbi, in the Torah that this border of Palestine is your homeland, or this is the promised land, or the message of Moses came to the whole world and to the whole land?
Sure, certainly. That is the point of what they base their corruption of the Torah, because every Jew yearns to return to the Holy Land, because when we left Egypt, God told us that we have to go in and to the Holy Land. But He stipulated that we have to be in a high level of holiness, more. It's like a body that if you have to make a transplant, it constantly needs medicine, because the body is sensitive, that it shouldn't reject the new heart or whatever it may be. So the Almighty warns us many times in the Torah that if we're not going to be on a especially high level of holiness, then we cannot exist as a nation. And that's what came about with the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago. And we were warned by all the prophets, including King Solomon, who built the temple. And he wrote in his book called Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, that the Almighty warned us. He put us, the Jewish people, under 3 oaths. And this he wrote before the destruction of the temple, that one, we should not return en masse in great numbers to the Holy Land as a nation. Secondly, we should not rebel against any nation. We are citizens wherever we are in every nation. We have to pray for its well-being and be loyal citizens. Thirdly, not to make any attempt to end exile. We as Jews believe that one day the Almighty will reveal His glory throughout the world, where all humanity will recognize one God, not become Jewish. Everybody will recognize one God, and we will join arms, and we will all go up and serve God. And of course, we have different beliefs of what will be at that end of time. Between the Jewish people, the Muslim people have different beliefs what will be. But it was never a point of contention or a problem, because we believe God will make it happen. It will be a miracle when God will reveal His glory. They'll stop being atheists. But till that day comes, we are expressly forbidden to return and create our own sovereignty. As individuals, the Almighty permitted us, with the permission of the, whether it would be the Ottoman Empire, whoever it may be, if they permit us, the Caliph at that time, to live there, then we were able to as individuals. And we did live there as a community, and we lived together with the Muslims, as everybody knows. But to go as a nation, to create a sovereignty, to create a so-called Jewish state, that is expressly forbidden. And that these people build on these concepts that we yearn to return. They took these concepts, and that God told us to go there, and He promised it to give to us, and that every Jew says in the Passover holiday, which is one of our major holidays, at the end we say, the coming year in Jerusalem. Every Jewish family says that. Now, my children never asked me, well, you could have just bought a ticket last year. Every year you say it, why don't you buy a ticket and go there? Because every child learns and understands. It doesn't mean you buy a ticket and go to Jerusalem. The coming year in Jerusalem means that we pray and yearn for when God will reveal His glory, when all humanity will serve. But to return as a nation, go back in mass, that is forbidden. But the Zionists count on the lack of knowledge, the lack of learning in the many Jews who don't keep the Sabbath. They don't know their religion. And unfortunately, it also goes over into compromised religious people. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are religious, but they're compromised in their religion.
Yes.
And the very religious, though, I'll repeat, the very religious, as an example, I live in New York. You come to New York, the most religious community is right across Manhattan. It's Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And you come in there, you'll think you went back 100 years. You'll see everybody dressed modestly, and people go with beards and everything. And there's not one single Israeli flag flying in these miles and miles. The same thing if you will go to Mea She'arim in Jerusalem, where they have the very religious community, or you go to London and Stamford Hills, where there's a mosque and a synagogue, they live together, and you go there, you'll see the communities, there's no Israeli flags. If anything, there's Palestinian flags. This is a Mea She'arim in Jerusalem. You know what just happened last week, by the way? I had a guest from the Holy Land that came to my house, 2 distinguished rabbis. They came to collect because it's communities, they refuse to take from the government anything. They don't take from medical aid and everything. So we have special funding for them. And they come collecting in New York. When they were there, they got a phone call. I was standing there when they got a phone call that they broke into this young man's father's house. His name is Rabbi Hirsch. They broke into his house in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock at night. Why? Because he was distributing Palestinian flags. So they broke into his house in the middle. They would love to do it in the middle of the night, to put a terror on the Jewish community in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, and to grab away everything. This was probably his computers, whatever he has, and the flags, just to put a terror on them. But this is what they have. So this is what the Zionists do.
Well, one day the believers of the Jews and the believers of the Muslims, they will work together to bring peace to this world. But just to sympathize with you, Rabbi, you have a radical Zionist. We do have a radical Arabic too. So And unfortunately, your Zionist people uniting with our Zionist or radical Arabian people, and they are firing the believers of the Jews and the believers of the Muslims. And did you have any thoughts when you see this Arab Gulf or Arab rich oil people cuddling and being nice to the occupier, illegitimate occupier of the Holy Land of Palestine? Do you have any thoughts?
Well,
what do you say? Or you know comment?
Jewish people, since 2,000 years ago, the Almighty said we are dispersed amongst the world, and we have to be people, holy people, and the people should look at us and say, he's doing, not stealing, not killing, and he's acting. Should they learn to emulate that a person should be a righteous person, and we are to be loyal citizens in every country and pray for the well-being, and not to mix in politics, and not to, so although we could have feelings, and when we see something that's not good, we have what to say, but we're not supposed to. We're supposed to just do, to serve God and do kindness and
well, in Islam we have a saying of Prophet Muhammad, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu." Whoever seen as something wrong should change it by your hand. If you can't, by your tongue talking about it. If you can't, by your heart. And but you cannot just let it go. Anyway, I really thank you, Rabbi, for enlightening us and being with us. And our conversation is not finished. We are going to have another hour in the TV and radio station. Right now, you can watch us on Karbala radio station. We're going there by 10 p.m. We'll start. And I really appreciate it. I thank God that we have a friendship. We've been friends for more than 20 years. And I thank God and I thank Moses that he still have good faithful people and good believers and good followers like you. And I thank God that he made me a friend of you. And one day the followers of Muhammad, peace of God be upon him, will be united with the followers of Moses, and the children of Abraham will unite, but not on the foundation of the wrong, will unite on the right foundation, on the goodwill and good gesture and satisfaction of God and Moses and Abraham and Muhammad, not against their own will. If you have final word, Rabbi, it's yours.
Well, with the help of the Almighty, we yearn to see the people of Palestine, that their suffering should stop immediately. We yearn to see their having their dignity, their life returned to them. And we pray and we cry. Many old rabbis told me when they saw Deir Yassin and so forth, how it hurts, and how frustrated we are because it is being done in our name. So we also look for the time that we should be able to show our appreciation for the kindness done to us, and that it should be all humanity should be able to serve God in harmony and peace and happiness. And I likewise, I'm very proud to have you as a friend, and it's an honor and a privilege, and I'm humbled by him.
Thank you. God bless you. Rabbi, let me say a few words in Arabic. Maybe you can say a few words in Hebrew too. So go ahead and say a few words in Hebrew so they can listen to the language of the Torah. Go ahead.
Well, just on that point, people speak by us. We are very careful. The chief rabbi of Palestine, it's a very important issue, that when these Zionists made their national language, they made it something called Ivrit. Now, it's called modern Hebrew. Why? Because they hate so much the religion that they even changed Lashon Kodesh, the old language. Now, we don't use our Lashon Kodesh to converse, and we use it only to pray and to study, and the Zionists came and they wanted to, and they hated the religion, so they made a new language. So we don't speak that. The chief rabbi, Rabbi Teitelbaum of blessed memory, said we should. That's worse than to serve idol worship, than to speak this language. So we don't even speak that language. What we do say that we say Shalom Aleichem. We say that God should bless you, Baruch Hashem, and so forth, because these are blessings, and these are words that we use because it's the holy language to offer blessings.
Let me say a few words to finish it. أعزائي المشاهدين، نشكر الله تعالى على هذا اللقاء المبارك مع الحاخام ديفيد الذي جاء من نيويورك وزارنا هنا في ديربورن ميشيغان في أمريكا، والتقينا معه هنا في مركز كربلاء. وأرجو أن تلاحظوا هذه النجمة التي على صدره، هذه النجمة التي يحملها، فهو ضد الاحتلال، وهو ضد العنف، وهو ضد الظلم، ويحمل علم فلسطين على جنبيه. هؤلاء هم أبناء التوراة الأصليين، هؤلاء هم أبناء موسى بن عمران سلام الله عليه، هؤلاء هم حقا أبناء إبراهيم الخليل حفظهم الله من كل سوء. حتى سألته مرة لماذا كسرت نظارتك؟ قال كنت في مسيرة ضد الصهيونية والاحتلال وجاءني أحد وضربني بلكمة فكسرت نظارتي. I'm telling them about your eyeglasses one time was broke. You fix it, alhamdulillah, thanks God.
Yeah.
You fix it. Okay, thank you very much for listening to us. Hopefully we'll meet again, me and my good friend Rabbi David. You are welcome, my friend. May God bless you and see you again. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.